to get into the spiritual aspect to Sufism, you mentioned to me earlier was has been an interest of yours as well, a part of this. And I'm not someone who studied Sufism intensely or understanding it well. And if you're open to sharing how Sufism has like played a role in your spiritual growth these last years as you study your traditions.
Yeah, definitely. So Sufism is the mystical part of the Islamic tradition. It's the core of the Islamic tradition. And it's what I believe to be the experiential dimension of the Islamic spiritual tradition. Meaning, you know, one can study religion from a very intellectual standpoint, and one can practice religion from a outward standpoint where you maybe observe certain rituals and you do the different practices, but it might lack an inner dimension that allows for real transformation to take place. And so Sufism for me is that transformational dimension of the Islamic tradition. And it is very much connected with other mystical paths from other religions and other traditions as well, which all have a shared goal, which is to merge with the universal consciousness, to go from the individual to the universal, to go from the ego identity to that boundless space of love, wisdom, awareness. And so Sufism is one path that can lead people to that reality. I can't, you know, I'm not claiming to have gotten there, but it's very much the path of the heart, the path of devotion, the path of invoking the beloved, as is often said, the beloved being the divine. And there's this courting that can happen between the seeker and the beloved. And so Sufism can really take somebody on a path of purification to culminate into a unity with all that is. And there are really incredible practices invoking the names of God. That's called dhikr, which literally means remembrance, the remembrance of God. And so it played such an important part of my path because growing up, I was not introduced to this dimension of the tradition. For me, it was all about the outward aspect of it. And there was a lot of fear surrounding it. What happens if I don't do this? What are the consequences after I die? All of those things that just made me have a distaste for the religion. But when I discovered Sufism, it really resonated because it went from a fear-based path to a love-based path. And it connected with many other wisdom traditions from around the world. And for me, that is very important. Like I can't subscribe to something that claims to be the one and only truth. Instead, I believe that, you know, there are many paths to the one. And Sufism, in many ways, acknowledges that. There are different branches of Sufism, so different groups and different people will have varying opinions, just like any, you know, any spiritual community.
Like the introduction I've had to Sufism is through the poetry and through the dance of it. I feel like that's the, like maybe a lot of Western people have had that glimpse of what Sufism is about without moving beyond, you know, that introduction or that little taste of it.
Yeah. I know what you mean. I've experienced that here in the US, and that's beautiful. You know, I'm happy to hear that, you know, and I've had that experience too. And it gives people like a direct taste of the reality that it can invite us into. But I think it's really important. And I found where I was moving towards was wanting to go to the source of where this tradition comes from. So yeah, the art, the poetry, the dance, that was all amazing. But I was like, okay, what is this connected to though? And for a lot of folks, I think Sufism, they might not know that it's a part of Islam. Like they're inextricably linked. And for some folks, they might think Sufism is just its own thing. People think about the poet Rumi,
Right.
Mystic poet from Persia, all about, love, divine love. And his poetry, just reading it can, take you to that ecstatic state. And a lot of folks don't know that Rumi was an Islamic jurist in Iran, before having been introduced to his teacher and basically having mystical experiences with his teacher. But he's very much rooted in traditional Islamic thought and education and development. So I feel it's important to make sure that there's an awareness of, how Sufism is very much connected to the roots of Islam. And there can be a beautiful harmony when bringing those two together, because they're not separate. They're the same. They're one. Sufism is just the inner core of the greater Islamic, tradition.